Hi YouTube family, my name is Elysia English and welcome back to my channel. During this video, we're going to tackle some projects around my kitchen. I've been dying to spend some time in here and add a few personalizations. So during this video, we're gonna spice this up a little. I've challenged myself to give myself only $20 to complete this project. Wish me luck. I don't know about your family, but our family spends a lot of time in our kitchen. The boys are always in here wondering what I'm doing. Philip's always in here doing something behind me, and so I really need to work on this space and make it a little more homey for our home. I don't have a huge budget to spend, and it's even more fun to be able to kind of do things with less, and so I'm going to use some upcycled materials and a very small budget to add a few items to this space. I want to add a spot where I can put my spices because right now I just keep them in baggies in the drawer. So I want to add a cute spot on the wall where I can do that. We're looking to do some kind of a menu meal plan throughout the week, especially being on YouTube. You really want to be able to kind of know what dinners are going to be throughout the week. That way I don't have to think about it. So I'm going to make a chalkboard menu board, and then we have a few other personal touches we want to add to really make this space look more like a home. I have a few items that I want to put in this space that we used in our last Trash or Treasure video. I'll put the card above for you if you missed that video, but I created a few items that I really want to have out on the counter to add some special items to this space. This isn't a huge kitchen, and so it's really important to have storage. And so adding a spice rack and a place to put our bread or items that you would maybe otherwise have on your counter, I'd like to have those tucked away. I just like to have a place for everything without cluttering up my counter space. But I still want to add decor to the space, but I want everything that's in here to be functional since I don't have a grand kitchen floor space. So we're really working on being able to find an item spot for absolutely everything, but having everything have its own purpose. Fun fact, about a year and a half ago, before we made our big move, we actually tore down this entire kitchen. I should actually correct myself. I actually tore down this whole kitchen. Philip was at work one day and I sent him a text and I said, by the way, I'm tearing down the kitchen. This kitchen was man-made by a gentleman that lived here years ago, and he made this whole kitchen out of scrap pieces. Nothing lined up, nothing was even. Sometimes the drawers didn't even open, or they would open into each other, so there wasn't any use for any of the drawer space, which made this entirely small kitchen seem absolutely minuscule. So I actually tore down this whole kitchen and said, by the way, we're getting a new kitchen. Philip was supportive once he saw 3/4 of the way down and helped me dismantle the rest of the kitchen. We also tore up some old, ugly mustard colored flooring, which we really knew had to go because it had a lot of holes out of it. So we are going to show you a few clips of us actually renovating this whole kitchen space with a really small budget. We decided to go with an IKEA kitchen, and we're really glad we did because we loved it and it was pretty easy to put together. Just took a little bit of time figuring it all out. So I'm going to show you some clips from that, and then we're going to transform this space and add some personal touches. Okay, so I have now backed myself out of my kitchen here, and you can see that I've grouted all of the tiles. The tiles are now starting to haze over quite a bit. I started back in this corner here, and it's really started to dry up. So in the next hour or two, I'll be able to go over and give it a really nice polish up with just a really smooth cloth to get all that dusty haze off. You can see when you rub it, it just comes off. So once everything in the vines is really dry, then I'll go through and do that. I made sure before I started grouting that the kitchen was really swept up and that there was no mortar raised too high in between the tiles. Wanted to get a really nice thick layer of the grout inside each of the tiles. And you know, it's inevitable that some of the tiles might be a little bit more raised than others depending on how your kitchen floor, subfloor was underneath, and that happened. So I just made sure that there was enough mortar in between all of the edges that, you know, it was gonna give it a really good, clean, polished look. So I'm really excited to see what it's gonna look like when we're done. And this is our next step, or our last step before we're able to start getting some of our cabinetry in and doing some work on some of the walls from the previous owners that had these really bad tiles all the way around the whole perimeter of the kitchen.
So all of that will get fixed up, and then the cabinets will start to get installed, and then we can get some water and some appliances going back in this kitchen, so that we're really looking forward to that. All right, so I will do another preview of the kitchen once I get the haze up off the floor.
Since moving back to our home, we really haven't taken a lot of time while we've been making our YouTube content to do any DIYs in our own home. And so one of our goals in 2020 is to be able to tackle some of the spaces that are still a little bit empty since coming home. Now we have some extra time. We want to be able to get this space looking back to normal again. The first project that I want to tackle for this space is adding some drapery to the window. I actually have 2 windows in this space. The one behind me, which I love, overlooks the backyard if the boys are outside playing. I like to keep that window open. That way I get as much sunlight as I can into this kitchen. It's the rear face to the house. We also have a side window here, which overlooks to the neighborhood. And since it's a lower window, I really want to have a drapery here that I can close. So at night, if I'm in my pajamas in the kitchen, I can close that for a little bit of privacy. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to try to use my new sewing machine. I'll put the card above for that video. I'm going to use a thrifted tablecloth as well as an old tea towel. I'm going to try to create a boho drapery by adding the tassels to the bottom of this tablecloth to make 2 separate panels. I'm gonna go give it a go. I've pre-washed this tablecloth from the thrift store, and now what I'm going to do is cut off the 2 white panels on either side. I don't want the white on here. I'm going to just use the gray and then add my white tassels at the bottom. So I have one side off, and I'm going to work on the other side. I'm folding the tablecloth in half, and I'm going to cut it so that I have 2 equal pieces. I got these great cutting tools for Christmas, and they're perfect to be able to do all my sewing projects. This next step, I'm going to cut off this white end where the tassels are on this tea towel, because I want to be able to use both ends on either end of my panel. So I'm going to be sewing them to the back. I lucked out perfectly that the tassel width that was across the tea towel bottom was actually just a little bit wider than what I needed to meet halfway. And since I want to have a little bit of give on each side of the panels so that I can kind of pleat it together, I actually have plenty. So I'm going to actually cut the strips that I made for the tablecloth to just as wide as this, leaving just a 1/4 inch on the side so I can make my seams all the way around. And then I'm going to make a pocket hole for my rod at the top and attach my tassels to the bottom. So I have some pinning to do. I made sure that my seams are going to be on the same direction that the old seams were at the end of the tablecloth. That way all of my back is on the back. So now what I'm gonna do is actually sew my sides to put them together, and I have my pins so that I can easily pull them out as I go. I'm gonna back stitch to start and then make my straight stitch all the way down. All right, I have my panels done, and I have my back side up, and I have my tab for my tassels, which I want right side down. And I'm going to fold this part back, pin it on so that all of my right side is the side where it's gonna hang on the curtain. So I'm going to pin it where I want it. But I want that nice seam at the back. I don't want it to look junky on the back. So I'm going to make it look tidy. Once I do this part, I can flip it over and see what it looks like on the good side. That way I kind of know what I'm dealing with to make sure. But I think this makes sense from now on for here. I'm not gonna cut off any excess until I've checked it on the other side to make sure, because I don't wanna cut and then maybe need some of it if I need to correct it. So I'm gonna flip it over and see what it's gonna look like when it's all sewn across. think that's gonna be all right. I'm gonna maybe just move this far end down just a little bit further because I kind of have it a little bit uneven here. So I'm gonna back that up just a tiny bit and then I'm gonna make my stitch across. While I'm at my machine, I'm going to make a pocket top. That way my dowel can go through it. I'm going to use a 2-inch space. That way it's big. If I ever wanna change my dowel, I can down the road and I won't have to remake my tab. So I'm going to pin it, both ends at 2. That way I can do all of this when I'm at the machine all at once. And I'm gonna do the same with both panels, and then we'll be ready to get them ready to put up on their new dowel we're going to make on our next project. On this end, I want to tuck that end that I had to cut in a tiny bit so that it's a nice clean edge at the end. Curtain rods can be really expensive depending on the style that you get. And what I wanted to do was find some thrifted, but since I wasn't able to find any that were actually short enough for what I needed for my kitchen space, I thought I would try to make my own. So I picked up a $2.99 dowel at the hardware store. This is, which thickness is this? This is a 3/4 inch thick. And what I'm gonna do is use some scrap pieces of 2x3, and I'm going to try to make my own corbels to be able to hang the dowel on it. So essentially I need some kind of like a hook system. I'm gonna stain these and then drill them to the wall to make my own DIY curtain holder. I'm using this upcycled piece of cardstock, which was the back of a notebook pad that was empty. I saved it to use it for a template for a stencil. So I'm going to trace the shape that I need for both of my corbels since I need 2. I need them to be exactly the same when I cut them on my scroll saw. So I'm going to measure how wide my piece of wood is so that I don't draw my design any wider than the width of my wood. And then I'm going to cut it out using scissors to be able to trace it onto 2 separate pieces of wood. So I'm just gonna design something and then I'm going to trace it twice. I have this scrap wood left from a blanket ladder that I made. So I'm going to make use of it for my curtain rod holder. Using my scroll saw, I'm gonna cut out my shape. Oh, it's amazing. Okay, now I need a second one. I know the width of my window and I want to make sure that my overhang happens just a little bit of either side of my window. And so I'm going to cut my dowel to 36 inches. I'm just going to use my scroll saw because it's super easy and it's only 3/4 inch thick. I'm going to give these a really good sand and then I'm going to apply my favorite provincial colored stain by Minwax to both the 2 corbels and my dowel. That way it'll be really cohesive. And I like that this color stain matches a lot of the other wood accents that we have in our home. So it's going to help the main floor be a little more cohesive.
By the way, Gunnar had that in his mouth this morning.
Oh, awesome, thank you. A little bit of extra puppy love in there.
Yeah.
He knows you gotta wear a mask in the shop.
Yeah.
I'm going to keep this template in my little box that I keep all of my cardstock stencils that I've created in case I want to make more of these. If this hangs the way I think it's going to look, I might want to make other curtain rod hangers for other locations in our house, like our living room and dining room. Since our kitchen, living room, and dining room are all on sort of the main floor, a little bit open concept, it will really look good if it's all the same in all 3 rooms. So if this turns out good, I think I'm going to make more of these. I've been saving all of my small mason jars that I've been having from jams and different things that we've been using for canning over the past couple of years. I gave them a really good clean and I'm going to use them for the inspiration for my spice rack. Because I have my spices in little baggies and just miscellaneous containers that they come in, I want to have a nice spot where I can quickly access them in the kitchen and open up a whole drawer space in my kitchen. So we're going to use some scrap pieces of lumber that I have left from some blanket ladders and some shiplap signs and some other things, and we're going to create a spice rack to be able to put these on. I'm using two 2x4 pieces that were left over from a project, and I'm going to cut 2 of them to 18 inches. These are going to be the end pieces to our spice rack. Ghostwood. To make sure that my spice rack is wide enough, I'm going to measure 4 mason jars side by side, which is 11.5 inches. So I know that I want to give a little bit of give room in between each jar. So I'm going to make my width in between, I'm going to do 12 inches. I'm going to do 3 rows of 4 mason jars. And so I'm going to cut 3 shelves to 12 inches long. I'm going to make a little lip at the front of the spice rack. That way none of the spices will fall off, and then it'll actually give myself enough room to be able to pull out the jars and put them back in. The design that I was thinking was that the rail would be a little bit higher, more of like a decorative thing, but then I can't get the jars out. I don't want to leave too much space and take up too much wall space. So I'm going to do it a little bit different than I planned. So I'm going to cut 3 of these to 15 inches. I'm going to sand all of the items that I've already cut out, and then I'm going to clean up a little bit before we stain and assemble. I don't want to get any sawdust and anything that's going to be an end product. While I wait for the stain to dry for a little bit for my spice rack, I'm going to move on to my menu board because I'm going to use chalkboard paint, and I'm going to need to do a couple of coats for this, allowing them some time to dry in between. So I'm going to use a leftover board that I have for a great big over the bed sign that I made. I have this scrap piece left. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to cut 18 inches, and then we're going to put a first coat of chalkboard paint on it. I'm gonna just explain to you about chalkboard paint and how it's different from chalk paint. Chalk paint is something you want to use when you're painting a piece of furniture to distress, and chalkboard paint is what you want to use actual chalk on to write, like a message board or maybe a calendar. I'm going to just make this actually to say the letters of the days of the week, rather than writing the word menu at the top. That way I could always use this for a calendar later if I change my mind on where I want to put it in the house. It just keeps it a little bit more of a flexible piece to be able to have a purpose somewhere in our home. If you want to use store-bought chalkboard paint, you can. Some brands are actually pretty expensive. I actually found this just at like a thrift area in a craft store on clearance for about $3. You can use extra plaster of Paris with my homemade chalk paint recipe to be able to make chalkboard paint. You just need to add some extra plaster if you don't want to spend the cost on buying store-bought chalkboard paint. So I'm going to paint a few coats on this, and we're going to get started. I'm using my favorite Elysia English brushes. You can wash these with warm water, and they work great for acrylic, latex, chalk, or even chalkboard paint. You can purchase these on my Etsy shop. These bristle brushes are 2 inches wide, and tonight we're launching the 1 inch wide smaller brushes. You guys have been asking for smaller bristles for smaller projects, and we have them on our shop located tonight. Before we can do a second coat. I'm going to pile a hole and then screw in each of these sides to go all the way around this spice rack, and then I'm going to put the fronts on, so I'll show you that next step. I'm going to add some slats to the back side to give it kind of a back wall. I'm going to use my brad nailer to adhere. To finish it off, I'm going to add a little ledge to each shelf. That way the mason jars won't slide off. I'm really excited about this next project we're gonna do for our kitchen. I wanted to create a great big E, the initial of our last name. I wanted to do a shiplap wood one where I could paint it in my favorite green color and just add a pop of color into our kitchen. I don't want to paint my kitchen a color. I just really like the fresh white of a space. It's like a clean area like a kitchen. And so the things that I'm putting into that space, I want to add some color. So I'm going to use my favorite green. We're going to put this together using some slat boards. You've seen me use these in lots of projects, so I have plenty of this scrap. So I'm going to put this together. Using my Silhouette Cameo, I created a stencil for the letter E, and I just picked a very generic font that I would be able to use. And so what I'm going to do is, because I wanted it larger than my Silhouette will print, if I can get this apart here, I'm going to piece a couple of them together to be able to create a big enough E for my space. Gosh, I'm stuck to myself. So this is the top of my E. I'm going to place down, and then I'm going to attach the second piece. Sometimes when I'm using the Silhouette Cameo, I'm limited to the size that I can create something. So in this case, I just doubled up on my stencil and was able to make it larger. I didn't need as many slats as I thought, which was actually kind of nice. So this is gonna be a nice big E. So I'm using the contact paper for my stencil, and I'm gonna trace around it so I know where I need to cut on my scroll saw. I love how many possibilities of projects that you can make using a scroll saw. There's so many different things that I can think of for projects for the new year using my tool, and I'm so excited about some of the things that I've already made with it in the past. It's so easy to use once you get the hang of it. So I'm gonna give this a light sand now, and then I'm gonna paint it with my favorite new green color. I'm gonna paint now, and I'm just gonna do really light coverage because I'm going to be heavily distressing this letter at the end anyways. I'm going to brace the back of my E when I flip it over with a 1x2, and so I'm just going to measure how long I need to have one for the bottom, and then I'm going to wood glue the smaller pieces to make sure that they stay firmly. If you're planning to distress your lettering, you want to make sure that you do your distressing before you fire it all together. That way you can get some distressing where some of the detailed spots are where it joins. It'll give it that really good aged look. I'm so excited to see how my panel curtains turned out and what they're gonna look like hanging in the kitchen. I like that they're going to let a little bit of sunlight in, but that they're going to just give enough coverage to give us some privacy out the side window. I love the tassels on the bottom, they look so cute. We have spent all day revamping and creating a few things that we can put in our kitchen space. Overall, I'm really happy with the way that it turned out. I have a few other projects in mind that we'll tackle on a future video. I'm going to show you what we tackled today. I'm really happy with the way that my transformation took place of the tablecloth and the tea towel. Being able to use the fringes on the bottom of the tea towel really gave this curtain set a little bit of a boho look. I like that the tassels are longer and that I didn't cut the curtains off at the length of the window. That way I'll be able to kind of move them in and out, and just kind of looks a little more homey with their longer. Since we have this big window, it's just nice to be able to cover it so people can't see in that side window. I left the other window bare, that way I get the most amount of sunlight through, and I can put as many plants as I want actually on the upper window as well as here, because lucky for me, it's deep enough to put a few small pots. I'm happy to finally have a spot to put my spices. This cute little spice rack just adds a little bit of dimension to this wall. I still think I'll add a little bit more artwork to this area since we have sort of a triangular shape going up the boys' staircase. But for now, I think this is a perfect spot to get some of my spices out of baggies in the drawer. I picked up this vintage stair basket for only $3. I'm really happy I'll be able to throw anything the boys forget on the main floor so they can take this up to their rooms to put things where they need to go. I included the bread box that we did in our last Trash or Treasure video and our salt and pepper shakers. I think it's really cute and I love having a spot to be able to put my son who has allergies bread so that he knows exactly where his safe bread is. I also picked up this butter container at the thrift store for only $1.99. At our house, I love to be able to keep the butter covered, and if we leave it out or pull it out of the fridge, you have to soften it every time, so I like being able to have butter out on the counter. Having a spot to be able to put our weekly menu for our dinners is perfect to have in the kitchen. I love that I made this a chalkboard. That way I can wipe it off with a damp cloth. That way we know we can write if we have tacos on Tuesday. We can easily write it out and the kids can have fun helping make the menu. My original plan was to remove my clock from my kitchen that I don't use that often and replace it with this shiplap E. But once I got it in the kitchen, I think just leaving it on the back wall and being able to move it where we want it is actually better for us. I used the mug rack from our Trash or Treasure video to display Phil's grandma's beautiful cups. I also picked up this cute 49-cent frog to be able to store my sponges in the kitchen. I like to use those crocheted non-disposable sponges, and so I like to have a spot to be able to put them instead of just leaving them at the sink. I remember growing up that every house you went to had these old vintage frogs, and so I couldn't wait to have one. It really is amazing when you can really think outside the box on how you can get creative with adding things to your space. I did spend less than $20 and I was able to add quite a few personalized items without really spending any money at all on even some of the items we added. I love that I was able to only spend less than $5 to be able to buy an upcycled tablecloth, the tea towel, and the dowel to make my very own hanger. Not buying a curtain rod saved me probably $20 or $30 to buy a custom one for the size of this window. Even at your clearance type stores, you're still gonna spend about $10 or more for a curtain rod. So I really was happy with the way that that turned out, spending so little. Adding the items I got thrifted gives your space a unique look when you don't buy something that's brand new from the store that you can just walk in and buy all the time. So I like being able to add those personal touches of things that you just can't get all the time. Let me know which project was your favorite. The shiplap alphabet letter, the chalkboard menu board, the DIY spice rack, the upcycled curtains, and the curtain rod. Or maybe you like the thrifted items best. We have run out of daylight working on our projects today. We will give you an update on our kitchen during the sunlight hours. But right now, we're really happy with the way that everything turned out. If you like this video, please hit the like button and share with someone you think will enjoy it. If you're not already part of our YouTube family, hit that subscribe button. We have lots more content coming your way. On New Year's Eve, I had so much fun doing my first live chat with you guys. We did a little test to see if our small town internet would be strong enough to do a live chat. We had so much fun talking with everyone and answering a lot of the questions that you guys have been dying to ask. We have scheduled to do another live on Sunday night at 7 p.m. Eastern Standard Time. I'll put all the information for the date and times for that in the description box. Bring all of your questions and come and chat with me. We are just gearing up to launch our next merch items, which are our painting aprons, and we're so excited to show you. We're gonna give you another sneak peek on that on our live on Sunday night. We're hoping to launch all of our aprons next week on our Etsy store. Thank you guys so much for all your support. I love you guys, and I'll see you on the next project.